Hello and welcome to the Surgical Spirit podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Haidar Al-hakim, the Third Eye Doctor. Pull up a chair and get ready for some candid and uncompromising discussion with experts, innovators, agitators, and influential people from every corner of health and well-being. From inside the hospital to at home in the kitchen, we're leaving no stone unturned in our quest to uncover the secrets of healthier, happier, more successful, and less stressful lives. Thank you so much for joining us, and without further ado, let's meet this episode's guest. Hello, Sam. How are you today?
Haidar, hello. Thanks so much for having me. I'm good, thank you. How are you doing?
Great. So I think we met through social media, and you had some interesting posts about, some sort of internal reflective stuff. How did it all start for you? I mean, tell us what happened.
Well, you are referring to the Instagram page that I have, which is called Permitted to Pause. And that is something I imagined. It'll be about 5 years ago now. And it was actually when I was on a career break. And the career break had happened quite opportunistically because my husband got a job in Montreal in Canada. And I had a bit of an internal conflict about not being at work for a year, going out to join him. The decision was based on me being able to go. And all of the internal conflict that was about, am I allowed to do this? Who's going to stop me? Is it right for me? Is my job going to be here when I get back? It was very much centered around my work. And like you, I work as a doctor, and we have put in the hours, we put in the years. We are devoted to what we do, to our teams, to our patients. And I just realized that I had found it very hard for a very long time to give myself permission about a lot of things. And this opportunity seemed too good to pass up. And what I realized is that it had come at a time when I was getting quite burnt out. And I knew something had to change, but I didn't imagine that a career break would be the thing. And I wasn't the one that had imagined that I would stop myself. I would take myself off and I would go and do this. And
what were you doing at the time?
So I work in dermatology, which a lot of doctors probably think is, we used to term it derma holiday when I was at medical school. It is a day job, which happens to be very good and very helpful for life and having things outside of life. I work in surgery in dermatology, and given everything, it is my perfect job. I have had quite a meandering career with a few different changes for various reasons. I enjoyed everything at medical school. I wanted to do everything. And that left me with thinking, right, the two options for me here to do everything and not specialize in anything are either general practice or A&E. And I thought that A&E was going to be my career choice. And I did a lot of things in the early years, even during medical school, and then in the early years after that, pointing towards perhaps that career choice. And I was really enthusiastic, as a lot of us are when we're young medics and just spat out of medical school and have all this knowledge and bubbling enthusiasm and motivation and whole life and career ahead. And I even took myself off in I'd done my registration year, my first house officer year. Thought I was going to quit within about an hour of my first house officer job in London. Thought medical school didn't prepare me for the real life and responsibility of being an actual doctor on the shop floor with a bleep, with responsibility. I didn't know how to write paracetamol on a drug chart. I mean, it prepared us for a lot of things, but there were certain realities that I just hadn't been prepared for. But that aside, it was the Friday morning to Monday night on calls with very, very little breaks. As a young 20-something, I thought, gosh, is this my life? And I had had such a ball at medical school, the tough times and the most brilliant times. Tough times with the exams and brilliant times were absolutely every other part of it for 6 years. And I was at St Mary's in Paddington, and it was just, anyone who's been there, you've been to a London medical school yourself, it's just an experience.
Yeah, it's a buzz. Yeah, it's definitely a buzz.
Definitely a buzz. And my lifelong friends them now that I've kept with me ever since then. So I did my house year, and I took myself off to South Africa for 3 months. Did a job share in my first SHO job year, which was pretty unheard of. But I just wanted to do something different. I'd always wanted to travel. I'd always wanted to just do something different, and I was. And it was just voluntary. And I came back to an A&E job in London, back at St Mary's, which again was an excellent experience. But I did the job in South Africa and in London, and in combination, I was like, this is not the job for me. I think I need a life outside of medicine, and I don't think that this is going to give me that. And that was my view at the time. But by that time, I had already got myself onto a surgical rotation. So
why surgery?
Because I'm just much more practical. I would say I'm less academic.
Yeah.
I'm not saying aren't academic, because I know you are as well, being an eye surgeon as well. But for me, I didn't want to sit and graft through general medicine. I just didn't want to do it. And I'd always wanted to take the surgical option if I was going to go through A&E. And part of my rotation included a 6-month plastic surgery job at Chelsea and Westminster in London. And that was the last job on my rotation. And I just fell in love with the job. And it was during that time that I did my surgical exams. So I did my MRCS, and which had overlapped actually from my previous orthopedic job. And I just loved it. But I was still looking at the doctors around me, the incredible eminent surgeons who I was lucky to hold a retractor for, or do a bit of suturing sometimes. But also we had a lot of independent stuff to do as well. And I just really took to it. And I'm quite, I would say I have an artistic side to me as well. Anyone who knows me knows I like making things, I like drawing things, I write a bit of poetry. There is this other side. And I think that's in medicine, to find something that I could use my hands with and do, that's really what I really enjoyed.
How did you deal with the chauvinistic side of sort of surgery, given that, I presume it's sort of the early 2000s and London's very competitive and there's lots of, masculine energy going on there. How did you sort of navigate that aspect?
Well, interestingly, in one of my earlier surgical jobs at Kingston Hospital, and I was doing general surgery at the time, I did have a very, I would say, very male, very traditional consultant surgeon I was working under at that time. This was ahead of my plastics job. And on his team, he had 2 female SHOs, so myself and another friend who happened to be at St Mary's before with me. There were 2 out of 3 female house officers, so our juniors, and there was a female registrar. So we were quite, actually, we'd started infiltrating that sort of male-dominated specialty. I think he was quite shocked and overwhelmed, and made it known, fairly openly at times, that we were women, and that, maybe this might be better done by a man. And there was another, there were also some plenty of males around us as well across the different firms. And there was a very senior male registrar, and I definitely had quite a hard time in being visible to him, to get my training done, to get my logbook filled, to get my time in theatre, all of that, to get my experience. And often I'd be working away in A&E, trying to get through the number of people and making sure they were seen and planning their surgery, getting their theatre planned, and still getting told off at 3 o'clock in the morning for not working fast enough when we were just trying to manage volume, which was not manageable with the number of people that we were. And there were definite moments, and there was a time at 3 o'clock in the morning that I'd kind of had my fill of a few months of feeling like I wasn't enough or wasn't doing enough. And he came down from theatre essentially to do the usual and say, come on, you're not working quickly enough. I can't work any quicker. And I haven't had no food and I've had no sleep. And it's been 24 hours. And I basically stood there in my very tired state and said, do you know what? I can't do medicine like you. You don't look very happy day to day. It's now 3-4 o'clock in the morning. We've just got a job to do, and you've got to trust me to do it. You know, I respect the level you're at. I respect what you're doing, but you've got to let me do this. We're doing it as best as we can. And ultimately, I did say to him at that time of morning, I don't want your life. I said, I want to be happier than you at 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning. And I also want to do the best thing by my patients. So I found that actually as a young 20-something, I was already having to stand up for myself in situations that might have been a female registrar. I mean, it just was a very memorable moment that I have recalled before as to how it sometimes felt to have the hierarchy above you in medicine. But I think that had been leading up from a time where I was just a bit sort of left, I don't know, to find the logbook filling by myself. I wasn't really helped very much. And that was just that was one situation. I definitely wouldn't say that was the rest of my surgical training. I had excellent training with females and males around me, and they steered me in all the ways that have helped me in my practice today. But yeah, that is definitely something I came across. And from that day forward, his whole attitude to me completely changed. And
How?
he just understood that I was capable. He then said, oh, Sam, come and do this procedure with me. Sam, I'm at bedside. Come and see this. I want to teach you. That had happened with one of my colleagues, but had never happened with me. And I just felt like I was a little bit behind in that, in that need to reach those same targets, because I had a limit, as we all do, a limited time to get that training done in the time that we're in those posts. And then it ended up being quite amicable. So I sort of didn't fear. I think I feared standing up for myself at times in my earlier years. But there are turning points like that where it wasn't planned. It was simply driven by being tired and hungry and and overworked and a little bit upset, that it made me think I can say what I think and what I feel. And for better or worse, there will be an outcome. But I've got to say this now, and actually it was for the better. So yeah, I think standing up for ourselves and finding our way in medicine, I think we've all experienced that, whether you're male, whether you're female. I think, we've all experienced. So yeah.
So, I mean, the opportunities were there for you. The doors were open for you. Yeah, one has to have the courage to walk through it, I guess.
Yeah, you also have to push a few doors open for yourself.
Yeah.
Because there are lots of them that either shut on you and you just are afraid to just try them again, or to take the door handle and see if it's locked or open. And sometimes you may be surprised by what's behind them. Yeah.
Could you give us an example of that, sort of in your earlier days in surgical medicine?
Oh gosh. Can I give you an example? Probably several. But I think probably for me, it may have been my first change in direction from surgery into what then was general practice, that was kind of this sort of big unknown in front of me. And I wasn't sure if I was doing the right thing, because all I knew is that I needed to change something. I knew that I didn't want to hold a bleep and be on call in a hospital for the rest of my career, because these brilliant, amazing plastic surgeons who I worked with and amongst, and who taught me very much, and obviously I passed my surgical exams during that time, I'll never forget. But I definitely knew that I couldn't be doing what they were doing in the middle of the night at the age of 60. I didn't want to. It's not that I couldn't, of course I could, but would it make me happy? I knew in my mid-20s it definitely wouldn't. So I remember the conversation I had with one of my consultant plastic surgeons at the time, where I needed to ask him for a reference to go on to the next job after plastics and at the end of my rotation. And that job was to be obstetrics and gynecology, because at that time I could choose a standalone post for 6 months to start building a little portfolio to go towards general practice, because I thought that's what I needed to do general practice, to have a bit more of a life. I'd have a day job and I'd have a life outside. And that's always, I think, been really important to me. And I didn't realize how much until the point where I came to a crossroads in my career and I could choose. It was time for me to choose. And those choices that we're accountable for can be really scary. And because it's quite life-changing, particularly in medicine, because you pick a subject, you pick a specialty, or a general specialty, a general career choice, and you go down it, don't you? And in our day, it feels like once you're on it, you're on it. And it felt like it would be difficult to come off it. So it had to be the right decision. And I thought, if I go down taking a number, if I pursued plastic surgery, I'd still have all of these, dominant surgeons around me. Yes, perhaps predominantly male at that time. Am I still going to have to be doing this kind of trying to get into theatre, trying to see this, trying to do that? Do I want that? And I just thought, I'm going to make my decision now. And of course, I was trying to be convinced by a lot of people around me, my surgical team, to say, but you've got your exams now, you can fly with this. Thank you, but I'm just going to take them. I'm glad I've done it, because I've ticked the boxes now that I felt I came here to do. But I'm gonna go. And I spoke to my consultant at the time, and I just remember holding my breath and saying, I know what I'm doing next. I just need your help with me getting my next, just with a reference for my next job. And he said, fantastic. What's it going to be? And I said, this is my career plan, and this is the job I want next. It's obs and gynae. And he just went, general practice. I think that's a great idea. And I think you need to go for it. Do what you think. And I just felt that support didn't need to be laced with fear. But again, it was like getting permission. I still come back to the permission thing, which I know you've talked about before as well. But I had it at that point. And then I just felt strong enough to pursue what I always knew was the right thing. So I trotted off and did obs and gynae, and then I did a paediatric job, and then I got my registrar job in general practice, and then I did my registrar year in general practice, and then I swore I would never do another exam again. And again, during my year as a GP registrar, my now sadly departed GP trainer, who became a very good friend for the last however many years since then, and he taught me how to be a real doctor. I will say that. He taught, in general practice, I just felt I was taught how to be a real doctor, how to really look into patients, how to really see what is inside them, what they are really actually asking for, because they don't necessarily ask for it. You're looking for
How do you mean? How do you mean? How to be a real doctor?
Yeah, well, it's the hidden agenda. So that's quite a big thing in general practice that is talked about quite a lot, because patients will come in with a problem and it will entirely be masking what they really want to talk about. So they might come with a physical thing or think it's a physical thing, and then it's the exploration. It's in a very short space of time as well. The skill required by GPs is really phenomenal in not only addressing their fear about that problem, the physical problem, because it might be very real, but you dig a little bit deeper with really clever questions, and you can elicit exactly really what their issue is. And there is a lot of mental health that comes into, psychological issues that come in with into general practice and come with physical problems. Whereas as a surgeon, you're delivered that physical problem. And as a surgeon, that physical problem is to be fixed. And you're the person that has the skill to fix it. And that's what you do. You don't deal with all the other stuff. And if I recall back to early days as a junior in surgery, we would do the ward rounds, and I'd be the one that trotted back to the hospital bed at the end of the ward round and go, did you understand all of that? And who's at home with you? And can you cope? And, just ask us any questions, because it felt, sadly at that time, that perhaps there wasn't enough time for that. And there weren't, that wasn't being delivered really as part of a holistic, a holistic care in surgery then. I can only speak for when I was training. Obviously, I've not done it for a long time in that setting. But I knew there was something more that I needed with my engagement with people. And I also knew that I preferred patients under local anaesthetic because I could talk to them and they could talk to me. So, I mean, learning with patients under general anaesthetic obviously is the business, because that's a great way to learn without them knowing. But it all supervised, obviously. But definitely, I realised all the different facets were starting to come through to me with all of what I thought I wanted to do, the practicalities of I want to do something surgical, the general side of sort of A&E versus GP. And I was thinking, how do I have a job that encompasses all of those things? And like I say, in medicine, it's so boxed in, or it has always been before more recent times, I think, as to what each role involves. So essentially, my GP trainer, if I go back to what you were saying before, he tried to encourage me to take the MRC GP exam, so all of the GP qualifications. And I just said, no way. From the outset, I said, I have done enough exams. I'm just tired. I want to learn your, general practice stuff, but I'm going to do that on the job. I've been an apprentice and I'm now going to carry on with the knowledge I have, and I'm not doing any more exams. And he sort of said, okay. And he kept asking, okay. And I kept saying, no, okay. And then I became a salaried GP. And guess what? I still felt I had a box to tick. And I did the MRC GP exams. For what reason, except box ticking, I don't know. Because it was stressful, as all exams are. And I hate exams, Haidar. I hate them. But we all have to do them. It's just not my favorite thing. So it's almost laughable that I did so many exams. I can absolutely tell you I'm never doing another one in my life. So this was kind of mid 2000s. In fact, I'll tell you exactly, it was sort of 2005. And then,
but I mean, why did you tick the box? Was it peer pressure, supervising pressure, or was it something that you really knew you had to do, and yet you're just a stubborn doctor?
I think there is definitely something in me that is a completer finisher. I mean, I know that I have been, found to be that when I've done one of those sort of personality trait things way back when. I say less so now. I think you can grow out of being perfectionist and complete finisher, but there was definitely something that felt unfinished. And I felt if I'm going to carry on in general practice, and I was only a salaried GP. I didn't think I wanted to be a partner, but I thought at some point I might need this to get me to the job I want. And I'm going to be up against people that have got it. And that probably ended up being the decision maker for me. And of course, it was brilliant to consolidate a whole lot of other knowledge, because usually until you do an exam, unless you do an exam, you really, that gives you a lot more detail and obviously helpful detail with your knowledge. But it definitely wasn't my trainer's sort of pressure. He just let me go. And we did talk about it a lot afterwards. And he said, I just knew you'd do it. I knew you would do it in the end. And so I kind of, at the time that I was doing general practice training, so when I was in my registrar year, I had actually met a dermatologist who it turned out was to shape my life and my career forever. So as a GP trainee, we go and we sit in for 4 sessions. We were sitting in for 4 sessions with a dermatologist because of the huge number of dermatology cases that come through general practice. And on my first session, she was asking what I did, and I told her, and she said, oh, could we borrow you? We just need someone to do some minor surgery, some minor ops, whatever that meant. I didn't even know at the time, minor ops, once a week. So I then had this perfect little sort of week where I did 3 days of general practice as a salaried doctor, and I just did this half day as doing minor surgery in the dermatology department. And I had no idea how much local anaesthetic surgery was being done. I just didn't know. It reflected a bit on plastics, and it reflected a bit on surgery with the local anaesthetic stuff. And I just thought, I've got this perfect. This is just perfect. But as time wore on, 6 months into my general practice salaried job, I was beginning to think, oh, I would like to do more of this dermatology stuff. I really like it. And general practice has its pressures. General practice is hard. And any of the stuff that's out there, having a go at GPs presently or ever, it is a very tough job on so many levels. And only GPs now will be able to tell you that. But I even know in my time, it was very hard leaving things at work. There's a fair bit of uncertainty. You don't have a lot of time with patients. You're not a specialist. You haven't got access to everything at your fingertips. You generally work quite isolated. It was very, very different to working in a hospital team. And I felt the pressures. And I was very I was pretty young in my general practice career. And really where the next turn happened in my career was when I developed some chest pain. And this was literally about 6 months after I'd been a salaried GP. I just got my MRC GP, so I had passed that in the July. And very rapidly, I ended up going to hospital and being diagnosed with non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. And it presented itself with essentially SVC obstruction. So I had a tumour that was about 12 centimetres, I was told, that was growing in my chest, in my mediastinum, and it just within a space of 72 hours had just caused a big obstruction. And I knew something pretty bad was going on. And that really is where my journey with general practice, which had been a very young career in general practice, really ended. I had 14 months of treatment, which included chemotherapy for the best part of it was probably about a year, a stem cell transplant, and some radiotherapy. And I came out the other end of it with a very different outlook on life, on work, on medicine, on what I wanted to be, what I wanted to do. And that's a very long monologue of how I've ended up actually where I am today.
Tell us more how it changed you. Tell us more.
So many ways. I think we've all got a story, haven't we? My story isn't everybody. Everyone's got their own story, and mine just happens to be one that refocused a lot of things for me. So when I talk about how I have felt with, or how I feel I've experienced burnout, I feel I've experienced it in lots of different ways and at different times. And it may have been related to work. It may have been related to non-work. It may have been related to the two of them just colliding. As life and work does, I say that they're not mutually exclusive. They overlap one another. And here was a whole period of time, 14 months, where I wasn't working. Completely would have worked if I could have, but I just physically couldn't. I was asked to be a GP partner in my salaried practice when I was doing that at the time. And I remember having a chat with I was called into the GP surgery in between chemotherapy sessions to have a chat about, was I going to apply for the partnership job? And I was just like, I just don't know. I'm not really in a place right now that I can really tell you what's going to happen with my health, let alone with my work. And so I sort of declined that politely. And I thought, what is going to be will be. We've got, the first thing here is I've got to get well. And when I get well, I've got to trust that the decisions in my life and the life path that is meant for me and the things that come to me that I can make a decision about, I hope, are going to come. But we've got one big important thing to do first, and that's to get out the other end of this. So you just have to let that be. And I think, so one of the things that I was forced into thinking really is, I can't hurry this along. I can't hurry anything about life along. I think, our bodies are very clever things, and I think they tell us things, and we are very good at ignoring them. And I think that's also the same about our minds. We do ignore things that we know are good for us, and we just override them. And it just made me realize we shouldn't do that. We can't do that. We've got to listen to our bodies and our minds, and just allow, our health to restore, do what we're told. I mean, I had no choice. I was out of control. And that was another thing I learned. The control was completely taken away from me. And I think when you are in a situation where your life is at threat and your health is in the hands of somebody else, and how ironic that it's in the hands of my own profession. So I was there on the other side of the hospital bed, trying not to be a doctor, which I was very good at, actually. I was definitely was a patient, but you just know too much. We do know a lot. And it just made me understand very much from a patient's point of view how frightening it can be when you don't know anything, let alone when you know stuff, and how completely at sea these patients are. They rely on our knowledge, they rely on our expertise, they rely on our discussions, they rely on, on our opinions. What else can they do? Whereas I could question them. I'm a medic. And that was hard in itself. So that was a very different perspective for me. So coming back into work, and now I work as a surgeon in dermatology, which essentially became a full-time job after I thankfully got better. And that's because the dermatologist I met, who was still there, she had the total belief that I would get back to work. I kept saying, I'm really sorry, I've got another few months off because I've got to have this section of my treatment. Completely understand if you want to, give someone else the role. Actually, she didn't. She just got locums in and got extra hours done. She said, your role is here, you will be back, and this job is yours when you're back. And that belief just kept me going, really, in the knowledge.
What was the reason for having that faith in you?
I just think she's a unique individual who maybe there was a bit of her that thought, actually, she's really valuable for our team. She's got to come back. I like to think that. But I don't know, just as a human, I know her now very, very well. She will always be a part of my life. Because I would never have even identified that dermatology was a place that I could find my happy place in and do all of the things that I really loved about medicine. The patients being awake, the local anaesthetic procedures, me still being surgical and creative, and me being able to talk to patients and understand holistically what they're going through when they're going through a skin cancer, or what they're going through when they're nervous about an operation, or even for something small. It's huge for those people walking in. And I say in medicine, and I sometimes say it to patients who are really anxious and coming to see me, they walk in the door, they've never met me, I'm the person that's about to cut something out of their face. Do you trust someone? Like, how do you get that trust in a few minutes of talking to that person who is going to really scar you for life in the best way you possibly can? So I think it's a huge privilege working with patients. I really do think that. And even more of a privilege to have those sorts of dialogues with them whilst you are doing your work on them. So it really is I just thrive in this job. I really do. But all of that said, when you do too much of something, it can get you. It definitely can become a bit less enjoyable. I think if you don't take regular breaks, it can be hard. If you go for long periods and not take annual leave, or have slightly longer breaks, it can be really hard. And on top of that, it is responsible. You've got huge responsibilities. All of our jobs in medicine are hugely responsible, whatever facet of medicine we're doing. And that just can mount up. And we don't realize it. We definitely don't realize it. And I think that when that time before my career break turned up, obviously life is also going on around you. And some of those really difficult life things that are going on behind you. And of course, I'd had health fears as well. all of this impacts on this person. And that's all we are at the end of the day. We're just a human, and we can only work with the resources we've got within us in any given day. And sometimes our resources are massive, and we've got full tanks, and sometimes they're not. And we have to be a bit more responsible with kind of maintaining our resources and keeping our tanks full. We can't continue to blame it or just say it's because of this at work. It probably is because of this and that at work. But everything in life, I think, and work is negotiable. And if we're not, a bit like going back to the A&E 3 a.m. conversation, if you don't say what matters to you, you will forever be stuck in that situation. And I think we all have the power to change that. So, yeah, if that's a long-winded way to answer your question about how things might have changed.
Yeah. And I mean, we'll come to sort of, the whole career break thing. But I mean, how about the sort of the elephant in the room, family dynamics? Obviously it's complicated, and you come from a half Lebanese family, and that's quite complicated. Was that sort of a driving force or a hindering force?
So most definitely a driving force. I would say my family are a huge driving force behind me. I'm actually from 100% Lebanese parents. Just one of the parents is from the northern part of Lebanon and one is from the southern part of Lebanon. So actually different religions, originally kind of different in religions, but full of the most incredible, as you would know, being Iraqi, the family-centered care and sometimes even so much care that you kind of learn to be a bit like that as well, that you become, I want to give so much care. And then it can be a bit sort of, I get disappointed sometimes when I'm not able physically or otherwise to give so much care that I've always received. But at the same time, we've also got to, sort of remain, we've got to keep our freedom around us, which I have been given in absolute droves. Yes, I'm a Lebanese female, but my parents thought very far ahead from myself and my two brothers to leave Nigeria, which is where I was actually born, and my older brother was born. My younger brother was born in the UK in the end. But to bring us away from Africa, where both my parents had spent time growing up and some of their adult life, and actually bring us to the UK and give us the future and an education that staying in Nigeria wouldn't have.
Well, what did they do in Nigeria?
So my dad did lots of different jobs. My parents they don't have professions. Well, they didn't have professions. My dad did lots of different things and just continued to make it happen. He just continued somehow to still earn a buck and still get us through school in the UK. And yes, it meant our family was separated, and that has always been a really difficult legacy for all of us. But lots of families are separated. I get that in this day and age as much as in the past, but we sort of lament at the fact we never had FaceTime. We didn't have the technology that we have now. To speak to my dad once a month, if we were lucky, on a really bad line through an operator in Nigeria was pretty hard. I remember getting my GCSE results up a mountain in Lebanon when my dad had said, you kids are going to go to Lebanon, the war has just subsided. I was 15. My older brother was, I think, 17 at that time. I think that I was 15, so 17, and my younger brother was 10. And we just went off with relatives for a week or so and just saw this beautiful but totally gutted, war-torn country when we landed in Beirut. And it was something we had to see, it's something we had to do. And like I say, it was the very summer, the very week I was getting my GCSE results. And because all the phone lines were down and everything was just a bit destroyed, although we stayed up in the mountains with another relative, we just went up another mountain to the only man who had a working telephone. So for me to ring Nigeria, who had rung England to get my results. And that's just how it was. I mean, I can't speak at all. You have been in situations I can't even imagine back in your home country, but you know, we're familiar. We understand a little bit about how you see that and how you see the privileged life here when you have seen the other. So yeah, I have a lot to be grateful for what our parents did for us and still do now. But I would also say that the work ethic in both my parents' sides of the family is phenomenal. I've been lucky to have longevity in grandparents, but who have long passed now. But most of them worked till they in their 80s. So, and my mom is 71, she's still working. You know, she teaches English as a foreign language. Dad is retired now, but it's just, yeah, that definitely has been a really strong thing that's come through to myself and both my brothers.
Yeah, I
So,
mean, you know, for us, taking time off on holiday is actually antithetical to our way of life. You know, it's literally work non-stop until yeah, you can't do it anymore. So taking time off is actually a very big challenge.
yeah, and that's where the challenges with permission come. And it's not saying, you know, how many times the family say, you need a break, have a week off, you know, stop, you're working too hard, this, that, the other. But there is something ingrained, isn't there? There's just something that doesn't enable you. And I'm not even saying that's the sole reason behind not having, you know, being able to give yourself permission. But I've written a couple of articles before now, and I say there's all these intrinsic and extrinsic things that lead to our ability to give ourselves permission. We're constantly looking for permission from others. I think in a lot of what all of us do every day, we want validation for things. We want not necessarily recognition for things, but you just want to be told it's okay. And, you know, I just think that there's so many things that we don't understand about the footprints that have been left in our lives, and all of the different things that have happened to us in our lives that impact upon that ability. And it's something so important. I don't know how much people really think about it in themselves, that they're burning out because they're not allowing themselves X, Y, or Z, that they're not asking somebody else for that thing because they're too afraid to express that, or, you know, it might be a negative outcome if they show vulnerability. Actually, that's all rubbish. We've absolutely got to, if we don't dig deep and understand what it is we need, who we are, why we need it, why we need this change, we just carry on. So, and then we burn out, or worse, you know, it definitely affects all of us. So I think we've just got to be a bit more open with ourselves and open about having conversations with ourselves and other people, so that permission isn't stigmatized, it's allowed. It's not, it's, you know, it's not against the rules or against the law. Ask for it. The worst thing is it gets turned down.
Yeah,
Ask for
yeah.
the
And
worst thing.
then you'll know a bit more about yourself in the process, you know, when
Exactly.
is there anything negative about coming from a Lebanese heritage which you wish you didn't have?
Oh, I immediately want to say no. It's, again, it's a privilege. It's a privilege to have another culture that I have grown up with.
Negative. I don't
I,
want the
I
positives. You can't be negative, is it? I guess that's a negative.
well, I'm really disappointed that my household didn't speak Arabic when I was younger. I heard Arabic all the time, so I did understand it, and I'm just trying to teach myself it again, which is nice. But anything negative? The voices can be quite loud. That's definitely something. And it doesn't necessarily mean that it's a negative anger. But I had to learn that quite a lot growing up. And even as an adult now, if I hear those loud voices, it makes me a bit anxious. You know, I've got to remember, and my personality is probably quieter than an average, Lebanese. I have fire in my belly, oh yes. But I kind of I I'm definitely a bit more reserved as a personality. And I think I've really learnt to be a bit more confident. And I don't always have that. I think, yeah. So sometimes maybe being Lebanese is a bit bigger than me.
Yeah. I mean, certainly, in the Iraqi heritage, it's very loud and brash and arrogant and boisterous and yeah, overwhelming. It's quite overwhelming. But that's just the way they are, It's nothing, it's not some kind of massive ego trip and yeah, just some sort of power grab or whatever. It's just loud and boisterous and intrusive. That's something that yeah, pissed me off a lot. It's very intrusive. People will know about everything in your whole life, and yeah,
And I
um,
have to, so that's another thing really that almost ties in a bit with what we're saying as well, is the boundaries. So sometimes just forming those boundaries without feeling that you're upsetting somebody. And I still haven't quite mastered that, because I do definitely still feel that sometimes if I'm creating a boundary, I know why I'm doing it. And I know that, or I might think I know I need to do it. And I'm not just saying with family, it's even, at work or outside of that. There's definitely something in me that feels I'm offending. And I know I'm not. And it may not be as well as badly received as I think it will be. Again, it's sort of pushing your own boundaries to explore that a little bit and being authentic and honest about.
yeah, it's a difficult one. I mean,
Yeah.
the other day, I had an argument with one of the nurses, and you know, and then it was done, and then we literally hugged and kissed and made up, and someone else sort of came in while we were sort of, not totally smooching, but we were sort of doing that kind of, physical embrace and so on. And they were quite shocked about it. They thought, bloody hell, what's going on here? But that's a very kind of Mediterranean, Middle Eastern, in your face,
Yeah.
uh, sort of visceral approach, which can be shocking for some, but for us, it's very much part and parcel of how we conduct life. I mean, we sound very English and posh here, but really we're not.
I know. I wouldn't have it any other way either. I wouldn't.
So, boundaries is quite difficult because sometimes patients come to me and I say something, and then looking back, I should
Yeah.
have really made the boundaries quite clear, and being much more, what's the word, gentler and sort of more clearer about these things, because they can take it quite the wrong way, really. Um, but I've definitely improved. I've definitely improved for sure.
But you see, again, I think I go back to my general practice training, as much as, we're all different personalities as well. We can't, medicine is made up of so many different characters, thank goodness. One thing that I've always really been interested in when I think about it is how certain specialties find certain people, or how certain people find certain specialities. And you definitely, you could look at sort of 10 different people and go, right, you'd be suited to that just by personality. It's just insane how some medical specialties kind of emanate a certain type, if you like, which of course it shouldn't, and it shouldn't need to do that. And everybody should fit into any specialty, no matter what. But I still think there's something about personality that can manage or cope or enjoy, thrive, not enjoy, and sometimes we have to do it to understand again where we belong in that. Do we belong in that? And that's why I think that whole like conveyor belt that we all seem to get on in medicine, we get fearful of jumping off it, either because of being seen to not cope with it, or be doing well in it, or you're weak to not carry on with it. Of course, it's none of those things, but actually we need to be strong enough to say, I've tried it, and you know what, I'm going to be better doing something else. And now I know that. And if I don't try it, how am I going to know? And now another perspective I've had really over the years and all the different changes I've had in my career, some of which have happened by accident and some of which have happened by choice, is that it really is okay to change. We don't have to be married to that career choice anymore. And portfolio careers are, I definitely fly the flag for that. And I think it's really healthy. I think it's really healthy to have outside interests, to make time for those other things. We work so much of our lives that if we don't enjoy it, and you've said before, I've seen your interview with Elliot Reeve, you need to do your passion. So you've got to combine your passion with also good knowledge and ability, and also balancing that with other stuff that you are passionate about that may or may not be at work. So yeah, I definitely think it's okay to change. And I don't think anything bad happens to you with that. I think we can still learn about ourselves and still develop ourselves in a role, even if it's a new one.
Yeah. I mean, I think, one of the major causes for burnout is a lack of change. So, that's the reason why a lot of people burn out, is because they don't change. And, change is actually a normal process of both our thinking and of our body. There's a constant cycle of accommodation and assimilation. So if you don't change, then there's a problem going on. I mean, I kind of disagree with you in terms of specialty. I think specialty attracts the personality, and I don't think specialty should accommodate to different personalities. So, if you're going to be the consultant plastic surgeon in a teaching hospital, that attracts a certain kind of personality, and the plastic consultant in a general hospital attracts a certain kind of personality, and a consultant plastic surgeon in the community attracts a certain kind of personality. So I think yeah, it sort of attracts different different personalities. But for us to kind of accommodate all personalities in a plastics teaching hospital, I think we'll kind of lose the plot there. I think this whole sort of notion about including everyone in, I don't really think that's what's the word? It's not practical, and it's not sustainable. I don't think it's not sustainable.
But I think you're right in that is what happens. That is definitely. But I also think that to not deny someone the opportunity, but for someone to then be fearful of opening that door because they're afraid.
For sure. I mean, opportunities definitely, allow for opportunities in all different walks of life and all levels of society, and all levels of class and ethnicity, for sure. But you still need this, the specific kind of qualities in that particular role. A politician's a politician's a politician. So, you still have to speak like a politician, dress like a politician, and act like a politician.
Well, that comes with expectation then. So what that role says is the expectation that everyone then continues to have of what that role should be. And that may be why it then doesn't attract, different people of different personalities and different walks of life. And so therefore, for me, I'm disagreeing with you again as well, like on the back of that, because the more expectation that's put upon, to be an orthopedic surgeon, you need to be a male rugby player, of a certain weight and a certain height, certain strength. No, I mean, I have.
Yeah, but that's broken down. I mean, that's not the case anymore. To be an orthopedic surgeon, you need to be a great surgeon, a great communicator, great with your hands, great team player, and have that sort of mind-body balance of providing great artistic and academic expertise in this situation. That's very much to do with qualities of the human rather than, those expectations of being a male rugby player and so on. In those days, that was the case, 30 years ago, because, we didn't have enough access to different resources of human beings. So, this is constantly changing, which I agree, and the dialogue is present, which is great, which is what it's about, having that sort of dialogue. Expectations is necessary to start the dialogue. But after that, it does, and there is this notion that, and I think Carl Jung talked about it, is that we don't have ideas, but ideas have us. So we don't have specialties, specialties have us. I'm sort of extending that analogy. I mean, I'm in a kind of hybrid situation where, I'm an ophthalmologist, but I happen to work in the community. But at the same time, I have a leadership role um, in that position, and at the same time, have an influential, social role as well. And I think those roles have attracted me because of my qualities or personality. I think that's the point I'm making.
Yes, but also you have perhaps steered yourself towards some of those roles organically.
I'm not sure. I'm not sure. I'm not sure. I think it's just happened to me.
Well, good.
I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. I mean, that's what I'm saying. It's like I'm not sure. Is it me or is it something else that's attracting me? And I mean, I'm a fan of phenomenology, and the whole philosophical aspect of that is that things shine forth, and we are attracted by that shining.
Yeah.
And what's the essence? Is it sort of us that perceive the shining, or is it the shining that shine forth for us to go towards, which is beyond our mental and logical recognition? So, that's the kind of
Yeah. Who actually knows? But
well, I don't know. So yeah, well,
opportunities, we've got to find them, and we've also got to just believe in our journey. I really do think that sounds really naff, but I do think we have to believe in ourselves and what is there for us. And
well, faith is necessary at the end of the day. I mean, in any endeavor, we undertake, we have to have faith, and faith is about trust. Is we put trust into people that we've had mutual experiences with. Marriage is a great example. We don't know the total ins and outs of our partners, but we have faith that being together is beneficial, just like your dermatology colleague had faith in you to
yeah,
to come back and do a wonderful job.
no, well, I'm grateful to her and grateful for where I am now, and yeah, and we
So
never.
I mean, we didn't get past sort of our first question about taking the plunge and going to Montreal.
I know. Well, I would be brief, but it was, yeah, I took the plunge, and I was really totally supported by my team to do that. I mean, my husband works in Premiership football, and we talk about burnout, we talk about in medicine, that's what we know, and it's so well versed, isn't it? It's talked about, thank goodness, which we're all grateful for. But there are other professions that are crazy. There are professions that do not, they're 24/7 working, they're 7 days a week, not dissimilar to medicine, and the pressures are huge. And I watch my husband, who is here, there, and everywhere, in Europe, in the UK, at weekends, just is continuous. And medicine, all I'm saying there is medicine isn't the only thing, but it was his job that he got offered in Montreal. And because my team was so used to me knocking on the door of my clinical lead when my husband was working in Cardiff and he was working in Manchester and he was, in various places, I would knock on the door and go, okay, can I change my job plan again? Because my husband's moving again. And I just stayed where I was. I kept my job. I felt, that's what I wanted to do and needed to do. And so on this occasion, I knocked. My clinical lead I remember her washing her hands at the sink. And I went, "Hi." And she said, "Where is it now, Sam?" So she kind of knew there was another change coming. And I said, "Well, this time it's Montreal, Canada." And I was kind of going to her for the first bit of permission because I just didn't know what it looked like for me. And I just needed the reassurance that it would still be okay for me to come back. And she just straight away said, "Just go. These opportunities do not come up very often. Your job will still be here when you get back. Don't take it as a sabbatical because you'll expect it to be coming back with something to show for it. Go and take it as a career break." And that was the beginning of me accepting that this could be a real thing. And the thing that I didn't know would be my career saver in terms of myself, how I felt to continue thriving and doing what I love doing. But I just got a bit tired because lots was going on around me outside of work as well. And I knew something had to change, and this was it. So really, it was scary. It was scary to just down tools, literally, and go. It was the best thing I ever did. And I definitely advocate career breaks to anyone who can do them. And I've written a BMJ article in fact, while I was in Montreal, to say we shouldn't fear career breaks. And in fact, in the way that Australia does it with their medics, they have a certain number of years of working and they factor in a career break for them. And I've heard this since writing that article, that people have said to me, we really should do something here to make it allowed, that people don't feel a stigma, that it's actually beneficial to just do something different and that it's okay to do it. And it doesn't have to be a year, it doesn't have to be 9 months. It could be like 1 month every year that you're just enabled to have it. Because annual leave sometimes just isn't enough. And in between all of that, you've got your appraisals and your CPD and, work and life. And just sometimes you want to stop because all we do is keep going. And with huge responsibilities that we have, as I said before, it can mount up and we don't recognize that that's happening. And, maternity leave is so well documented. It's done so well. And there is planning for it. It's far worse for somebody to suddenly stop work and take a break because of stress, because there's no planning involved in that for anybody either side of it. Whereas actually, if you just said, okay, I don't have children, but I'm not saying maternity leave is a holiday, absolutely not. But what I am saying is, though, we could do it the same way. And that's for men, for women, for anybody, and just make this pathway through our careers just better and allow for longevity and good mental health. And
I mean, we'll put a link to the BMJ article in the notes, so hopefully people can look at that and have a think. How did it? What were the three things that sort of how did it change you having that career break?
It gave me the insight that I could give myself permission and that I could be the one to make that decision about a career break if I got to that point again in the future. That I shouldn't fear the outcomes of just coming, just stopping for a little bit. So the second thing I would say is it definitely consolidated my understanding of better balance. I don't think we ever get to the perfect life-work balance, but understanding what feeling more balanced actually is and what I personally need to do in my life to do that. And that has been reducing sessions, giving myself a bit of space in the week, doing stuff outside of work, all those things that might be exercise, that might be music, that might be, anything, friends, family. You've got to make time for those things because time doesn't just get dumped in front of you with an unlimited sort of resource. It's something you have to use wisely. And the other thing I would say, I think the reflection on my health and my illness and what that meant to me, because I came straight back to work immediately. I was still quite ill, but I just know I needed to come back to work. And I have patients I see even now who say, I remember when you came, when you saw me back in 2007 and you had a headscarf on. I didn't have to tell them anything about that, but they remember that. And there, you know, the sort of the beauty of and the blessing of survival, actually, that I have, and therefore I can take with me in every day that I treat patients who might be having the same worries or concerns. So reflecting on all of that and feeling very privileged and blessed to be here, but understanding that life is still not perfect, even when you've survived cancer. And that's okay, because dealing with the crap things in life as well just tells you you're alive as much as the good things do. So yeah, that would be probably my three things, and a few more.
Wonderful. I mean, it's been absolute pleasure listening to you and really moving.
Thank you, Haidar. I feel like I've talked a lot. I'm sorry to chew your ear. It's been so lovely and very easy to talk to you. So grateful and honoured to have had time with you.
Well, I mean, you know, the honor is mine, and for our listeners. How's best for people to contact you? What's the best way?
So pretty much the only social media thing I do, because I'm such a dinosaur, is my Permitted to Pause Instagram is at Permitted to Pause. And I do have a website, which I am in the throes of updating, but it's www.permittedtopause.co.uk, which has a few other things that I've done and things I've talked about and articles I've written. And just I keep going with it, really.
And mention the charity that you're working with and supporting.
So off the back of it, during the lockdown, I just I made a few little products. I made some postcards, which were sort of rainbow NHS postcards, and I made some care boxes, actually, which I was just selling at the time. And I contacted the wonderful Claire Gerarda at the time, who pointed me in the direction of this new charity, Doctors in Distress, who are just amazing and run by, well, it was started by an incredible guy called Amandip Sidhu, who very sadly lost his brother to suicide, and he was a cardiologist and with hidden mental health issues. And I was just raising a bit of money off the back of selling a few products, and then from that I've just really just been advocating them and just doing a bit when I can for them, and running a little bit in May to raise money for them. And they do great work, and they are really so you can find them on Instagram as well at I think if you look up Doctors in Distress, you will find them. They just have really good stuff for medics and all the healthcare professionals, really supporting them through difficult times. So yeah, also worth a look.
Great. Thank you so much, Sam.
Thank you ever so much, Haidar. You take care.